Hey guys, what's up? I'm Noah. This is Analog Resurgence, and today I'm going to tell you all about how to buy expired film and probably not get scammed. I mean, hopefully. One of the most unique things about shooting film over digital is shooting expired film because of how experimental and unexpected the results can be. Now, of course, shooting expired film can also lead to some really poor results sometimes, but there are some factors that affect the film that you can kind of keep in mind when you're trying to pick some of this expired stuff up, especially when you're looking online at some of this stuff. To help you guys out, I'm going to throw some timecode links down in the description to help you kind of pick apart the sections that might most apply to you. First, let's look at some of the factors that affect how film ages. First of all, black and white film is the safest bet when you're shooting expired stuff. Black and white film ages far better than color film. Now, this is because there's less layers that need to be activated on black and white film, and it's a lot easier to develop, especially at home on your own. In comparison, color film can age worse over time because there's more layers on the film that need to be affected in order to render color properly and give you reliable, decent results. So because of the way color film ages, if you're shooting expired color negative film, it can usually give you more unexpected results. Things like wild color shifts, higher grain, different contrast, just things that you can't usually expect. Now, the same principles of color negative film apply to expired color slide film. Color slide film ages really poorly sometimes because of how intense the chemical process is and how much needs to happen to the film so that it can give you decent results after coming out of the process with a positive image. Another factor that plays a big part in how film ages over time is the ISO of the film. Now again, ISO is the light sensitivity of the film, and over time, film loses some of this sensitivity. So that means that higher ISO films age much quicker than lower ISO films. So things like 500 or 800 or 3200, all these different high ISO films will typically age much quicker than low ISO films like 50 or 100. So those instances of shooting really expired high ISO films is when you start to notice things like really pronounced grain. Storage. Let's imagine film as food. Okay, well, similar to food. Certain types of film will actually last longer if you either refrigerate your film or if you even freeze the film entirely. For short-term storage, it's definitely a safe idea to put your film in the fridge, maybe in that cheese drawer or wherever you happen to have room. But for long-term storage, you should actually toss some of those rolls in the freezer, and this can really help to stave off some of that aging process for even years. Cooler temperatures will always keep your film in much better condition, especially over long periods of time. So if you are trying to buy expired film and you do want stuff that is a little more reliable when you're going to shoot it, try and find people who have stored their film properly, either in dry places or in freezers or even fridges for the past several years. Okay, now let's break down the different types of film that you guys might be looking to shoot if you're buying expired stuff. Still film. So when you're shooting photography film in 35mm or 120 medium format, you can find all sorts of expired stuff. Sometimes you'll see stuff that's expired by a couple of months, sometimes you'll see stuff that's expired by a couple of decades. There's all sorts of recently expired or long expired stuff out there that's either discontinued or old stock, and all sorts of different things that you guys can play around with if you want to. If you're buying 35mm film, you might still be able to get it in a box that has the expiration date on it. And that way you can kind of estimate just how old this film is. For any of these normal film formats, it's safe to keep black and white negative, color negative, and slide film in either a fridge or a freezer. They're safe to store that way and can really help to improve the lifetime of your film. Cinema film. So cinema film is a little bit different, of course, than still film. You can get it in Super 8mm, 16mm, or even 35mm. For things like 16mm and 35mm, you might find what are either called recans or short ends. And these are just rolls that have been used on productions that they just didn't finish and have been put back into the canister. Now, of course, they might come in really beat up old cans like these, but sometimes the film inside is still really good. So for color negative film, Kodak currently makes what's called Vision 3 color negative. But older cinema stocks that you might come across can be called Vision 2, Vision 1, or EXR. And those are all films that Kodak has been making over the past 20 years or so. You might also find old cinema Fuji stocks. Now, Fujifilm doesn't currently make motion picture film anymore. They discontinued it a number of years ago. Some of these stocks include Reala, Eterna, and F-Series. At this point, they're all a number of years old, so they can still give you really unexpected results. In terms of reversal film for Super 8 and 16, older things like black and white reversal and color reversal are pretty questionable because they usually don't age super well. So be wary of picking up anything that's older than the earlier 2000s because they just might not be worth developing at this point. Now for Super 8 cartridges, you're going to want to avoid any of those old sound Super 8 films, along with any of the old film that says either Type A or Type G on it. At this point, these films are so old that they just usually can't be processed properly anymore, even by professional film labs. So unlike normal film, motion picture rolls don't actually have expiration dates printed on the cans or the cartridges anywhere. So the best way of determining the age of that film is just by looking it up and figuring out the period of time when that film was being manufactured. Wikipedia actually keeps a really nice list of all the different types of motion picture film stocks out there, and I'll throw a link to that down in the description for you guys who might want to try and seek out some of this stuff and put an age to some of that old Vision 2 stuff. Instant film. Of all types of film that exists, instant film is definitely the kind that ages the quickest and is the most unexpected. Now, I've already talked a lot about Polaroids, but again, instant film actually contains liquid chemicals in the film. And over time, these chemicals can dry out and just become less effective and just not give you really good results at all. You can safely store instant film in a fridge at cool temperature in order to extend the lifespan of this film. But it's really important that for instant film, you don't freeze it. Don't store it in the freezer because this can just really mess up your chemicals and it will just never properly thaw out. You can still find boxes of Polaroid branded film from the earlier 2000s from around the time it was discontinued and even earlier. But at this point, this stuff can give you really unexpected results and sometimes can come out looking like this. So even if it's been stored at cool temperatures, it can still be really unexpected. You may also come across expired Impossible Project film from over the last decade or so. Now, early Impossible Project stuff was really unexpected when they were first making it and it was brand new. So at this point, it's definitely something that is really unexpected when you go to shoot it back. Now, besides that type of Polaroid instant film, you can also find expired pack film for Polaroid land cameras. The most common stuff to come across is the Fuji film stuff, which is either Fuji FP100C or Fuji FP3000B. But you might still come across older Polaroid brand stuff that will give you really unexpected results because of its age at this point. Now, these Fuji packs can still give you really great, really reliable results, especially if they've been stored in a fridge for the last little while. And you can find the expiration date on the top of the box here. Sadly, this stuff is in pretty high demand because Fuji has discontinued it a few years ago and there's no new supplier right now. But if you can get your hands on it, it is a really nice instant film. What to avoid? Kodachrome. Now, I've mentioned this before, but I'll say it again. Kodachrome is a dead film format. It was famously discontinued and it was beautiful and it was sad, but it's gone now. The chemical process that was used for Kodachrome is just obsolete, and nobody in the world can properly process Kodachrome as a color reversal film, which is the way that it was intended to be seen. There are some instances where it can still be developed with really wild results as a black and white negative film, but at that point, maybe just shoot a black and white negative film, unless you are after those really crazy expired film results. There is a place called Film Rescue in Saskatchewan here in Canada, and they're known for being able to take all sorts of old expired film and put them through crazy chemical processes that are highly specialized in order to save some of the images that might still be on these old rolls. Film Rescue does some really interesting work, and I'll throw a link to them down in the description in case any of you guys are looking for a service like that. For shooting any sort of color negative film, try and shoot only film that says C41 on the packaging somewhere. C41 is the current type of chemical process for developing color negative film. Any lab that's developing color negative film is doing it in the C41 process, which means that anything that you buy that says C41 on it, they can do it. But there are precursors to the C41 process, such as C22. And a lot of labs aren't capable of processing these rolls because it's obsolete now. And the same thing goes for shooting slide film. Color slide film, Ektachrome, Provia, Velvia, all these current slide film types are developed in a process called E6. And any lab doing color reversal slide film processing is doing it in E6. But again, there are precursors to the E6 development process, sometimes called ECO3 or VNF1. And avoid those because at this point they're too old to be properly processed anymore, and a lot of labs won't take them. But again, if you're ever in doubt about what can be properly processed by a film lab, just contact the film lab and ask them. They'll definitely know for sure. Now, as an example of some of the expired film that I shoot, I didn't talk too much about shooting 4x5 film because I want to save a lot of that 4x5 large format stuff for future videos. But some of my favorite expired film to shoot is this Kodak Plus X black and white negative film in 4x5 from the 1970s. This stuff expired decades ago, and I use a more specialized developer when I'm doing it at home, but it can still give wildly unpredictable results, and I've just kind of fallen in love with how it looks because it just looks so interesting. So shooting expired film can be wild and experimental and really fun, and it's one of the things about shooting analog formats that is really unique to that. You can't easily recreate a lot of this stuff in digital without doing just a lot of post-editing work. But it is important to kind of expect the unexpected so that you're not too upset or disappointed with the results that you get. So if you are just starting out with these analog formats, I would definitely recommend maybe sticking to brand new film for the time being, just until you get some of those fundamentals down. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I hope that answered some of your questions that you might have about shooting expired film and what's good to shoot and what's better to avoid. And I hope that you pick some of these formats up, whether it be stuff that's expired only by a few months or stuff that's expired by a few decades. Both can give you just really fun and unexpected results, and it's kind of what makes shooting analog formats really special. And subscribe if you haven't done so already, as I continue to post all sorts of analog content every week about all this stuff that I love so much, and I really want to help some of you guys get into more. Thanks, and I'll see you guys soon.